I'm delighted to be joined today by Tim Bradshaw. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm all right, Nick. Thank you very much. Nice to see you. A little bit weary, having just returned, as you well know, from Kyiv. So
yes, I was going to say to you, you back and kind of calm, or are you still crazy?
I think no, it's interesting. I mean, I think you come back. It's weird. I come back physically exhausted because it's a lot of driving, to be honest, but also kind of on a little bit of a buzz and kind of reinvigorated to want to do more, really.
So listen, I should start afresh. I don't usually timestamp, but I think kind of the reason you and I are speaking, because we did have a plan to speak in the future, but the reason we're speaking now is what you've been up to lately. Tell me, how many times you've been across and what have you been doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were literally sitting on the sofa with a cup of coffee, and we were watching, I guess, 2.5 months ago now? And we kind of watched with a little bit of disbelief, to be honest, as Russia kind of rolled across the border into Ukraine, and you kind of go, this is not really a political statement. Somebody's just marched into somebody else's country. It's fairly black and white. And then I think the humanitarian aid sort of or aspect of that really kicks in, and I looked at it, and in fact my wife looked at me and she said, you and your gang could probably help that. You could probably do something about that. Therefore you should. And I kind of went, yeah, we probably should. So within 48 hours, we got the race trailers loaded up. We got about 7,000 ration packs, 500 sleeping bags, a couple of hundred first aid kits. With you very much doing what everybody else had done, which was kind of drive to the Polish border, and deliver it to somebody, who. And actually, when we got out there, as we do, as good intelligence officer, you start to look at a network and you start to talk to people, and we realise that actually we're just scratching the surface, and that the real problem actually was inside Ukraine. So the world was kind of perceiving the problem as those coming across the border into Poland. Poland's doing an amazing job. The real problem was inside. So almost instantly, we were like, we need to come back. We need to plan bigger and better, and we need to go further into Ukraine. So the next time we went round, the second time, we actually went into Lviv, and we took the aid to where it needs to go. And that gave us an even bigger in-depth perspective of what was going on. And we built a network. We collaborated and built partnerships with, there's this amazing group of young people working together to support the sort of troops on the front line. And you've almost got three tiers, which I think is perhaps not necessarily coming across on the news. You've got the Ukrainian army, who are doing an incredible job, and that's their job. That is their day job, that's what they do, whether they're at war or not, like the British Army. They're actually pretty well equipped, they're pretty well trained, and their will to fight is phenomenal, frankly. I mean, you talk about resilience, but they are not taking a backward step. Then you've got this kind of second group, and the second group are, I guess we would call them the reserves or the TA, so they were kind of people that sort of were always on the list to step up, but guess what, that sort of phone call that you all hope would never come has come, and they've stepped up. But then in some respects, and I don't mean this in any way disrespectful to the other two groups, but what you've also then got is these guys and girls that have just stepped up. 2 months ago, they were mechanics, lawyers, accountants, whatever, and they're kind of putting together whatever uniform they can, and they're either physically fighting, or what they're doing is they're running casualties backwards and forwards, aid backwards and forwards, and helping people come out of the country. And they've literally got what they stand in, to be honest. And we handed over, we were boiling a bag rations, kind of pack it, you just kind of open it, eat it. There's like 600 calories in each one or whatever. And I mean, I swore I'd never eat one again, having done 15 years military service. But actually, these guys were almost in tears when we handed this stuff over. And then brand new sleeping bags. Vango sponsored us to do this, and we handed over brand new sleeping bags. And we started to get emails from within the country saying, just to let you know, kind of, I've had my first square meal in 3 days, and I slept last night. And you kind of go, wow, okay. Maybe we are making a difference. So then the third trip that we've just done, and for me, I think there's a good piece about resilience here. I think probably like everybody else, initially there was a kind of tick a box, let's go and do it. We've done our bit, move on, probably go and plant a tree on the way home, and then we've ticked all the boxes. I only half jokingly say that. But I think actually when you see it, you realise that actually it's up to us to be resilient, to support them. We've got to keep at it as well. So the last time we were in Kyiv, and we spent 3 days in Kyiv, working with the local, I keep calling them the resistance. It's like something out of 1940. I can't help it.
Yeah, it paints romantic pictures. That.
Yeah, but to be fair, that's very much it's very much what they're like, and they're just cracking on. And from Kyiv, these young people are going backwards and forwards to the front line directly to help.
Yeah.
One young woman we spoke to, I won't give you a name for obvious reasons, but she's a paramedic by trade, and she lost her boyfriend in Mariupol. But she's not stopped. She's not taking a day off. She's just smashing backwards and forwards. So we're now putting together our fourth mission, which is probably going to be the biggest yet. And what we actually want to do is deliver some training as well. So we're going to take 4 4x4s, pack them with first aid trauma kits, ration packs, and deliver them and leave the vehicles there for them because they've got a real problem with casual-evac vehicles. But we're going to spend a week training them trauma first aid stuff and some driving stuff as well to try and maximise it. So yeah, and that's what we're up to. But I think we've just got to keep. I think we've got to keep at it. It's about the resilience faced by them. When they look at you and they go, "Thank you." There's an amazing video clip. I think I put it on LinkedIn a while back, and that young lady says, "Just to know we're not alone."
Yeah.
And it was so powerful for her to sit there and go, "Thank you," because just to never mind the kind of rations and the sleeping bags and the bits and pieces, but for her to say, "Just to know we're not alone," gives us the courage to keep going again. And I think there's a good lesson there for all of us, right?
Absolutely. Let me ask just kind of one thing that struck home, because your years in the military, your years as a kind of intelligence officer, you say the first one you went and you just did it because you did it because it was the right thing to do and because you could do it. It's that part of your training in terms of you got there and you realized you had to adapt, and actually it was much deeper than just doing that maybe kind of surface level trip.
I think you're right, because it's intrinsic, right? It's built into you, and I guess there's a latent desire to want to support and to serve, which is probably why I joined the military in the first place. But I think also 10 or 15 years worth of really high-end training of how to influence people, how to network with people, and also just to be effective. We sat down with our guys and we said, right, this is what we're going to do. There was never any discussion about whether or if or could we. The discussion was, this is what we're doing. How do we make it happen? And then I think when you get on the ground, all of those instincts and all of that training then kick in. And the first thing I had to do was establish a network of people, build partnerships and collaborate.
Yeah.
Get ground truth, intelligence, not information, work on what's going around us, because your level of risk has to accelerate in order to be effective. But you have to do that in a way where you're gathering the intelligence around you and building the relationships. Because again, for me, it became really obvious, with the greatest respect to people that have donated, but they've got piles of people's old stuff on the border in Poland. It's like a garage sale.
Right.
And it became really obvious to us that wasn't going to help. So those old instincts kicked in. Like, what's the mission? How do we achieve it? Okay, what do we need? Collaborate. And I always say most people collaborate. Most people have a go-to team that they phone, whereas I say, no, don't do that. What you need to do is you need to fill the gaps. So what skills don't we have? What intelligence don't we have? And that's where you collaborate to make the team stronger, so you cover each other's blind spots.
Let me listen, kind of, it's meant to be an in conversation, but I've been absolutely fascinated about everything you've said. So it kind of, I've got time for one last question, which kind of, what's your opinion of how it's being reported in terms of the media and what we're hearing as opposed to the reality on the ground? And what's your opinion about how actually the world has reacted to the situation?
I think there's two or three major issues. So bear with me, Nick. Right, but I think the first bit that is the dots that aren't being joined at the moment, which I don't think is deliberate, and I don't think it's necessarily poor reporting or anything, but I don't think people realise how much this is affecting us here. We've got fuel prices going through the roof. We've got food prices going through the roof. Ukraine provides, I think, 40% of Europe's grain and fertilizer supply. And right now, all of that stuff is sitting in ports and silos in places like Odessa, and it can't get out. So actually, even if our motivation is entirely selfish, never mind the kind of humanitarian, I don't like bullies. I know it sounds daft, but I don't like bullies. And even if we take that out of it, it's actually in our interest. We need Ukraine to win this conflict, because our fuel prices, our interdependability, and our food prices are going to keep going through the roof unless we free it. So I think for me in the media, there's probably quite a fair representation of what's happening. I think the numbers are terrifying. So I think that there's no sense of scale, I would say, in the media. So don't quote me, because the numbers are quite hard to authenticate.
Yeah.
But the kind of numbers that we're getting bandied about are that Russia has lost around 36,000 soldiers, and that Ukraine have lost somewhere in the region of 10 to 15,000 soldiers.
Yeah.
Well, to give everybody a frame of reference, the British Army, and again, please don't quote me, don't be upset if I got it slightly wrong, I was there. The British Army lost somewhere in the region of 560 soldiers in 10 years in Afghanistan. Right. And when you look at those numbers, for me, you then look at what's going on in Ukraine. I mean, it's almost World War II stuff. The sheer loss, the scale of the loss, and I think that's something.
Sorry, I don't mean, but I find it really interesting, the whole concept of almost the bigger the number gets, the more abstract it becomes.
Yeah, because you can't focus it, can you? You've got no sort of no frame of reference. So, already Ukraine has lost 25 times the amount of troops that we lost in Afghanistan, and I think that's not coming across. I don't think. Yeah. And I also don't. I think that the media's focused quite a lot on the kind of humanitarian bit, which for me is almost negative, if that makes sense. The people trying to get out, the people trying to come back. But the reality, there's a huge number of people refusing to be refugees because they're staying and fighting. And if they can't fight, then they're supporting the effort, which in my head is actually kind of positive, that they're cracking on and they're finding a way to be part of that solution. Whatever that looks like, they're refusing to be victims, they're refusing to be refugees, and they're, we could take so many lessons out of that. That this will to fight, this will to change and adapt is fascinating, Nick, to be honest, to see them.
Tim, thank you so much for your time. When's the plan for the next mission? Well,
we've got to get it together first. We've got quite a lot of fundraising to do to get these sort of 4 vehicles and all the kit. So it'll be within the next month or two. So what we've done is we've actually built a network of people. I need to be a little bit careful about what I say, but we've united 2 or 3 of the groups within Ukraine, right, to get them to all to work together. And we're trying to work out to get everybody to collaborate so that we can then make the maximum effect to the aid and make sure we're sort of the right people at the right place at the right time. So all of that's now spinning together to see how we can get it done.
Tim, thank you for the last 15 minutes of absolute education for me, and hopefully really fascinating for everyone else out there. Good luck in everything you're doing, and please keep doing it.
Thanks, Nick. No, I appreciate that.
Take care.
See ya.